It was back in 2001 when I decided to head out for a hunting trip at Sample Meadow, just above Huntington Lake. I had just made my way through a marshy area and into some dense pine trees. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I startled two deer, catching just a flash of them as they darted away through the trees. I froze, standing perfectly still, trying to blend in with my surroundings. A couple of minutes later, I heard this really weird noise, a loud whoosh of air, and then the sharp crack of a branch snapping behind me in the thick pines. My heart skipped a beat. I had never heard anything like it before, so I stayed frozen in place, barely daring to breathe. A minute passed, and then I heard it again, this time a little further away. But then it moved closer, to the north, over and over, like something was circling around, trying to figure me out or maybe scare me off. The last time I heard it, it sounded alarmingly close, right behind me. Instinctively, I flinched, and just then, whatever it was must have spotted me because it took off through the trees, crashing through branches and making that same eerie sound as it retreated. After about 5 tense minutes standing there, not hearing a thing, I finally mustered the nerve to walk back out of the woods to where my dad was waiting in the truck. We headed about a mile down the road to a campsite for lunch. While we ate, I recounted the whole eerie tale to my dad, describing the strange noises. He speculated it might have been a buck grunting, something I'd never heard before but seemed plausible. We both thought it might return to that spot, so after lunch we decided to head back. When we got there, we planned to split up. My dad headed towards where the deer had run off to, while I circled back toward the pine trees, hoping to spook them again. As I got closer, I saw three does sprinting right towards me. Just before reaching the trees, the same strange noise and cracking branch sound erupted again. It startled the deer, sending two downhill and the last one uphill, right at me. It skidded to a stop just 10 feet away, too panicked by whatever had spooked it to even notice me, standing there like a deer in headlights. Eventually, it got so close I had to move lest it collided with me. That startled it so badly that it collapsed briefly, spun around on the ground, and darted away, leaving me with nothing but adrenaline and the mystery sound. Curious, and maybe a bit foolish, I followed the path the deer had taken, determined to find out what was causing the noise. I crept slowly along, and after rounding a tree, there it was, a large, shadowy figure with thick black hair lounging under a massive pine, soaking in the sunlight. Its shoulders were broad and muscular, the hair about 4 to 6 inches long, but not quite concealing the solid build beneath. A fallen tree blocked my view of its lower half, but its eyes locked with mine, deep and dark. The breeze ruffled the hair on its head, and its face was dark, like an ape's without any noticeable facial hair. We stared, locked in a stillness that seemed to stretch forever in that 1 minute. I felt an urge to get a closer look, so I took a cautious step to my left to get around the fallen tree. But as soon as I moved out of sight, I heard it spring up, crashing through the trees with that same explosive breathing and cracking branches noise, leaving me alone in the quiet forest once more. I'm no stranger to early morning adventures, but that particular dawn was something else entirely. The plan was set, three of us going up the Sierra Nevada mountains for a deer hunt. We had positioned one hunter at the top of the hill, hiking there under the cover of darkness before the first light. My uncle and I started our own climb as the sun began to peek over the horizon, splitting up about halfway. There were two other hunters camped not too far from us, maybe 200 yards away at the base, but we had no clue who they were or what they were up to. Just another pair of strangers in the wilderness. As my uncle veered off to the right, heading southeast, I went left, northwest, tackling the south side of the mountain. The landscape there was a mix of open sagebrush spaces dotted with cypress trees, while deep gulches, cut into the hillside, housed thick clusters of towering pine trees. My strategy was simple: stick to these tree groves, work my way up to the peak, and drive any unsuspecting deer into the path of our waiting hunter. But as I navigated through the grove, it came to an abrupt end, forcing me to cross a clearing to reach another cluster under the peak. That's when I stumbled upon something strange: a blind, constructed from a broken branch, looped into the larger tree. An uneasy feeling hit me, like I was being watched. I brushed it off, thinking it was those other hunters from the camp below. Pushing deeper into the grove, I discovered another oddity: a 25-foot tree placed upside down against a much larger one, snapped at its base, not sawed. It was impressive and bewildering. Here, that feeling of being watched crept up once more, stronger this time. As I moved up and to the left, I froze. There, not too far away, stood a silhouette, a massive bipedal figure, about 8 feet tall. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, positioned as if ready to sprint, peering back at me over its shoulder. Its brow was heavy, forehead small, with a slightly pointed back of the head. The body, muscular yet lean, was covered in hair. Its arms hung down unbelievably long, ending in hands with freakishly long fingers. Before I could fully grasp what was happening, it turned and sprinted away up the hill with incredible speed, disappearing behind the trees faster than a spooked deer. In just a second or two, it was gone. Heart pounding, I approached the spot where it had stood, not a footprint in sight. The thick blanket of pine needles swallowed any trace. Using a nearby tree for scale, I tried to piece together what I'd seen. It was a dark silhouette, but the shadow and sunlight made it hard to tell if it was dark brown or black. I was left stunned, caught between disbelief and wonder. It preyed on my mind for days, and eventually curiosity won. I visited a hypnotist, hoping to unearth more details. The session was intense, and the confirmation that I hadn't just imagined the encounter was both chilling and exhilarating. I don't know what it was that I saw that day, but I know it was real. Some stories you just can't shake, and this was one I'll carry with me forever. Back in August 1995, the crew from the Adventures television show was filming an episode along the scenic California coast. On their last day of shooting, they headed into a redwood forest near Crescent City. After a long day, the camera crew was packing up, while the rest of the crew decided to have some fun, cruising through the giant trees, music blasting, and capturing silly moments on their handheld camera. They turned onto a narrow road, which soon became a problem. As it was getting late, rain began to fall, and they realized there was no easy way to turn their big 34-foot RV around. Suddenly, the driver noticed something up ahead. It looked like a bear about 35 yards away. Excited at the thought of capturing some wildlife footage for their episode, the crew decided to get a closer look. As they slowly approached, it became clear that this was no ordinary bear. The creature was walking on two legs, its arms swinging naturally as it ambled across the road. Intrigued and a bit startled, they drove up to about 5 yards from it. The headlights of the RV caught its lower half as it quickly moved across the road again and vanished behind a huge redwood tree. Two crew members jumped out of the RV, hoping to capture more footage, but the dense forest and fading light made it impossible. What little footage they did get showed a massive, shaggy figure standing around 7.5 feet tall, remarkably similar to the famous Sasquatch from the Patterson-Gimlin film. The video revealed intriguing anatomical features. The shape of its head, its muscular build, and the way it moved were all striking. These details convinced the team to take the footage seriously, prompting them to arrange for two independent analyses of the video to better understand what they had witnessed. In the meantime, one of the crew members visited the site, spoke with a witness, and reviewed everyone's account of the event. So far, everything seemed credible, leaving them wondering if they had truly encountered the legendary Bigfoot. The results of the video enhancements were eagerly awaited, with hopes of unveiling more details about their mysterious encounter in the redwoods.